greetings to the citizens of the world. The Russia hacking flap has nothing to do with Russia and nothing to do with hacking. The story is basically a DNC invention that was concocted to mitigate the political fallout from the nearly 50,000 emails that WikiLeaks planned to publish on July 22, 2016, just 3 days before the Democratic National Convention. That's what this is really all about. Russia didn't hack anything, it's a big diversion that was conjured up on the fly to keep Hillary's bandwagon from going down in flames. Put yourself in Hillary's shoes for a minute. She knew the deluge was coming and she knew it was going to be bad. According to veteran intelligence professionals for Sanity, DNC contractor CrowdStrike claimed to find evidence of Russian malware on DNC servers just 3 days after WikiLeaks announced that it was about to publish emails related to Hillary Clinton. Clearly, that was no coincidence. The plan to blame Russia was already underway. Hillary knew that the emails were going to expose the DNC's efforts to rig the primaries and torpedo Bernie Sanders' campaign, and she knew that the media was going to have a field day dissecting the private communications word by word on cable news or splashing them across the headlines for weeks on end. It was going to be excruciating. She knew that, they all knew that. And how would her supporters react when they discovered that their party leaders and presidential candidate were actively involved in sabotaging the democratic process and subverting the primaries? That wasn't going to go over well with voters in Poughkeepsie, now was it? Maybe she'd see her public approval ratings slip even more. Maybe she'd nosedive in the polls or lose the election outright. She didn't know. No one knew. All they knew was that she was in trouble. Big trouble. So she reacted exactly the way you'd expect Hillary to react. She hit the panic button. In fact, they all freaked out, every one of them, including Bodes too and the rest of the DNC honchos. Once they figured that their presidential bid could go up in smoke, they decided to act preemptively, pull out all the stops and go big. That's where Russia comes into the picture. The DNC brass, with help from allies at the CIA, decided to conjure up a story so fantastic that, well, it had to be true. After all, that's what the 17 intel agencies said, right? And so did the elite media, including the New York Times, the Washington Post and CNN. They can't all be wrong, can they? Sure. They goofed up on Saddam's WMDs, and Iran's imaginary nukes program, and Assad's fictional chemical weapons attack. But, hey, everyone makes mistakes, right? In any event, they settled on Russia mainly because Russia had rolled back Washington's imperial projects in both Ukraine and Syria, so the media was already in full demonetization mode and raring to go. All the DNC needed to do was utter the words Russia meddling and they'd be off to the races. Does any of this sound even remotely believable? Former CIA analyst Ray McGovern seems to think so, because he expounded a very similar scenario about a month ago in an interview. Ray McGovern: what did Hillary do? Hillary gathered her war council together and one fellow says, I know what we can do. We'll blame it on the Russians. And someone else says, but it wasn't the Russians, it was WikiLeaks. Guy number one says, well, that's a tougher. We hate them both equally, so we'll say WikiLeaks is working with the Russians. Ray McGovern: that was 2 days before the convention. And someone else says, what would the rationale be? Guy number two says, come on, the Russians clearly want Trump to win. Number one: but what about the major media? Number two: well, the major media really want Hillary to win, so if we get the major media on board, well, we really got it wired. Ray McGovern again: and if you watch the coverage since the WikiLeaks leak, 2 days before the convention, the media content was not how did Hillary steal the election but how did the Russians do it? He's right, isn't he? Hillary and company pulled off the whole ruse without a hitch. The media focused on the Russia meddling angle, and the calculating Ms. Clinton slipped away with nary a scratch. It's amazing. But there was one glitch to the blame Russia scheme. There was no hard evidence of Russian involvement. And now, 10 months into multiple investigations of Russian hacking, there's still no evidence. How can that be? Well, for one thing, the FBI was never given access to the DNC computers. Let me repeat that, in the biggest and most politically explosive investigation in more than a decade, an investigation that has obvious national security implications, alleged cyber espionage by a hostile foreign power, alleged collusion by high-ranking officials in the current administration, alleged treason or collusion on part of the chief executive, and the possible impeachment of a sitting president. The FBI has not yet secured or examined the servers that may or may not provide compelling forensic evidence of cyber intrusion by Russia. Why? Why would the FBI accept the analysis of some flunky organization that no one has ever heard of before, CrowdStrike, rather than use all the tools at their disposal to thoroughly investigate whether or not the hacking actually took place or not? Isn't that their job? You're damn right it is. The reason the FBI never insisted on examining the DNC servers is because they knew the story was baloney from the get-go. Otherwise they would have kicked down the doors at the DNC, seized the computers through brute force, and arrested anyone who tried to stop them. Those computers are Exhibit A in the trial of the century. They should be under lock and key at FBI headquarters, not collecting cobwebs in the basement of the DNC HQ. The fact that the servers have not been seized and examined just proves what a joke this whole Russia deal really is. You see, when a law enforcement agency like the FBI fails so conspicuously in carrying out its duties, you have to assume that other factors are involved, mainly politics. It's all politics, right? There is no rational explanation for the FBI's behavior other than it is following a political script that coincides with the agenda and ambitions of the DNC and other power players behind the scenes. Investigative journalist Gareth Porter summed it up perfectly in the brilliant article titled "Foisting Blame for Cyber Hacking on Russia." He said, "The history of the US government's claim that Russian intelligence hacked into election databases reveals it to be a clear case of politically motivated analysis by the DHS and the intelligence community. Not only was the claim based on nothing more than inherently inconclusive technical indicators, but no credible motive for Russian intelligence wanting personal information on registered voters was ever suggested." Right on, Porter. Facts don't matter in the Russia hacking case. They never have. The whole approach from day one has been to drown the public with innuendo and baseless accusations, while the MSM barkers pretend that Russia meddling is already settled science and that only Putin puppets would ever doubt the veracity of the media's loony claims. Got that? But facts do matter, and so does evidence. And on that score we're in luck, because McGovern's group, the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, VIPS, released a blockbuster report last week that produced the first hard evidence that Russia most certainly did not hack the DNC servers. It was a DNC insider. Here's an excerpt from the VIPS article titled "Was the Russian Hack an Inside Job?" Independent cyber investigators have now come up with verifiable evidence from metadata found in the record of the alleged Russian hack. They found that the purported hack of the DNC was not a hack, but originated with a copy by an insider. The data was leaked after being doctored with a cut-and-paste job to implicate Russia. Key among the findings of the independent forensic investigations is the conclusion that the DNC data was copied onto a storage device at a speed that far exceeds an internet capability for a remote hack. Of equal importance, the forensics show that the copying and doctoring were performed on the east coast of the US. Was the Russian hack an inside job? Counterpunch. Capis. There was no hack. Someone working inside the DNC, a disgruntled employee, who had access to the computers, and who worked on the East Coast, copied the data onto a storage device and transferred it to WikiLeaks. That's what you call a leak, not a hack. There was no hack. Russia was not involved. The official narrative is bullshit. End of story. Naturally, the MSM has completely ignored the VIP's report, just as they ignored Serhej's brilliant article that proved that Assad did not launch a chemical weapons attack in Syria. That bit of information has been locked out of the MSM coverage altogether, as it doesn't jibe with Washington's Assad must go policy. So too, McGovern's verifiable forensic evidence that the Russians did not hack the DNC servers will likely be consigned to the memory hole like every other inconvenient factoid that doesn't fit with Washington's foreign policy objectives. The fact that the FBI has not seized the DNC computers is just one of many glaring omissions in this farcical investigation. But there are others too. Like this: did you know that there are 2 eyewitnesses in the case that have not yet been questioned? That's right, there are 2 people who claim to know the identity of the person who gave the stolen emails to WikiLeaks, Julian Assange and Craig Murray. Murray, who is the former UK ambassador to Uzbekistan and a human rights activist, claims he met the person who took the emails from the DNC in a wooded area in Washington, D.C. last year. In other words, Murray can settle this matter once and for all and put an end to this year-long witch hunt that has consumed the media and Capitol Hill, prevented the Congress from conducting the people's business, and increased the probability of a conflagration with nuclear-armed Russia. But here's the problem: the FBI has never interviewed Murray or made any effort to interview him. It's like he doesn't exist. In other words, we have a credible witness who can positively identify the person who leaked the emails, gave them to WikiLeaks, and set off a political firestorm that has engulfed the Capitol and the country for the last year, and the FBI hasn't interviewed him? Will someone explain that to me, please? That's why I remain convinced that the Russia hacking story is pure, unalloyed bunkum. There's not a word of truth to any of it. We hope this information has enlightened you. We are anonymous.